Okay, so picking up where we left off, we have a client here who can walk over, pick up a weapon. It'll get added to the inventory. We check that with Q. You can see he has child 3. Then he has child 2. And then you wait for that to clear, press Q again, and you can tell he has all 3 items in his inventory. So he can pick them up, no problem, and they get destroyed when he gets picked up. So what we need to do now is get them so they actually spawn when he picks them up. So to do that, we have to have a spawn point. We're going to go over here to our character, select him, go to Edit Blueprint, open the Blueprint Editor, and get over to your mesh. Pick on the skeleton right here, click it, and over here with the actual bones. And this is, if you remember, this represents, every single bone he has. If you can go ahead and find the right hand. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a socket. So right click, add socket, and it pops up down here. Highlight it, press F2, and we're going to call it the weapon socket. Okay, so it's very important that you have this spelled exactly right. Well, you can spell whatever you want, but you have to remember it. Same with capitalization. Everything like that matters because we're going to call this socket. We're going to use it as a reference point for where the weapon goes to the hand. So if you can see right here, weapon socket is lit up. And if I zoom in, and you can just right click and use your normal navigation, you can tell it's right there. Now here, you can slow down your camera. Let me move this over just a little bit. This is the camera speed, how fast we're moving around this miniature world. There we go. Slowed it down to 2. And you can get in there and you can see about where it's at. It's at his wrist, and that's what we want. So to preview how the weapon's going to look, we need to add 2 things. We need to have this preview scene selected, and we need to go ahead and go over to, where am I looking? Yeah, right here. Under default, go to use specific animation, hit this drop down, and then we're going to see the rifle idle, okay? And this is so when we preview the weapon in the socket, we have a good reference point because we're going to have to tweak the socket. So you'll see what I mean here in just a second. So to the weapon socket, we're going to right click and we're going to add a preview asset. And I'm trying to remember what the name of that rifle was. I think it was, if we just type in X, maybe we'll get lucky and it'll pop up. Yeah, the SKAR4X. Go ahead and select that. Okay. And if you notice, the weapon's all backwards and everything like that. So what we need to do is arrange it so the weapon looks right in his hand. To make it a little bit easier, I'm going to pause them right there. And then I'm going to use these rotations. Now, it's really important to make sure you have the socket selected and you don't have his hand selected. Sometimes when you're clicking around over here, you'll hit bones. You don't want to do that. Get your weapon socket selected, and then just click this down here, rotate it. Okay, like so. Go up a little bit. All right. And then going to go over here and select the translate, and then this is going to allow us to move it into position. All right, and you want to get it pretty close. Now we can adjust this later. We want to get it reasonable, and then we'll tweak it. You want to make sure it looks right from all angles. By pressing spacebar with the socket highlighted, you can move like this, but here's the problem. See how it's all jerky like that? You just need to turn off the grid lock. So I think it's this one. Yeah, no, this one right here. And that'll allow you to smoothly move it. You would want it in a grid. Let's say we were building like a a building or something and you wanted everything to line up perfectly based off other like wall points, but here we don't want that. This is going to be a lot of fine tweaking, and you can do it on your own. You can spend a lot of time and get this as right as you want, but I think that might work for now. That way you guys aren't just sitting here watching me line all this stuff up. That looks pretty good. Now, here's the deal. What we're doing, we're not this weapon isn't actually here. It's not spawned into our game or anything like that. We're just using it as a visual to get our sockets rotation set correctly, so that way when we do spawn the weapon in, it looks like this. When we go to the animation blueprint, we can add things in there that will get his hand in just the right position, get this hand in just the right position, and we can even maybe find a way to fix little things like this and get it rotated just right. But for right now, that's what we want. Okay? So let's save that, and then let's go to our main map right here. Open up the blueprint editor of your character, remember? Here, select them, blueprint, open blueprint editor. Okay, and I left you this big mess. So what we need to do is we need to organize it now. If this was C++, I would say to go ahead and put it into a function. The problem is Unreal, it doesn't do functions with blueprints the way you think it would. And I'm going to show you. So we're going to have to use a macro, which is a way to condense these, and you really wouldn't do that in traditional programming. So I'm just going to show you what I mean instead of talking about it. So if you remember this queue, this is how we display our inventory. I'm just going to move it out of the way. What we want to condense here is this mess over here. So we got our input action, which is our interact, and this is what destroys our pickup after we pick it up. So I'm going to drag this out of the way like that. I don't think we need this print string here anymore, so we can delete that. Okay, and so now we have this mess right here. So just go ahead and select it all like this, press Control C. Okay, and instead of a function, we're going to open up a macro. And what did we do here? Let's see. Okay, so when I open up a new macro, it gives us this input and output. We're going to paste what we have in there. Control V. Okay, and the input's going to go over here, remember? So you just drag and you drop it, and it'll automatically connect it up just like that for you, nice and neat. And then our output, the only time we're going to want to move on from this is if we actually pick something up. And remember, we did this check. If add unique is -1, it's going to go to true, which means we didn't add anything to the inventory. But if we do add something to the inventory, we want to continue on to the next step, which is going to be spawning. So right now we're just doing this for organization. So let's go ahead and clean this up, because I have not been good at keeping you guys organized. So we're just going to kind of line these up a little bit so everything is nice and orderly. Just like that. Move that over there. So you just want to be able to tell what's going on, because you might not be the only one looking at this. Double click this right here. That gives you another little reroute node, and you can pull this down. Do it again right here, and then slide it over. Okay, a lot more organized. And so just to kind of recap what this thing does, after you press E, it comes into this input. Then it's going to look in your capsule component for overlapped actors. It's looking for your weapon pickups. That's what we selected right here. So for each supposed weapon pickup, it's going to cast to the weapon pickup master, so we can access elements within the weapon pickup master, which contains, our weapon pickup master contains a variable that holds our weapon actual information, which happens to be pretty much just a skeletal mesh, which is going to be our weapon. If we don't already have one of these in our weapon inventory, it's going to add unique which means it's adding only unique items to the inventory. If it doesn't add anything to the inventory, it's going to spit out a -1. That -1 means it didn't find anything. It didn't find anything new. And or let me say this: if it hits a -1, that means it already had it in there. And if it already had it in the inventory, it's going to turn true, and it's going to spit out this print string that says did not add to inventory, and that's all where the code ends. If it does add to the inventory, then it destroys our pickup and heads to the output. Now, I'm going to compile and save. The reason I'm using a macro instead of a function is because if you use a function in Blueprints, all of these, like this completed node, it's going to come out and it's going to continue the signal flow, and we don't necessarily want that in this situation. Same with the cast failed. It's going to continue out. If this thing fails, that means for whatever reason, it's overlapping something that's not a weapon pickup master, and we don't want to continue on if we're not picking up weapons. It could be overlapping another character or who knows. But here's the big one. We definitely don't want it to continue on if we hit a -1, because that means we didn't add anything into our inventory. And if we don't add anything into our inventory, it doesn't make sense to continue our signal flow and then try to spawn something that doesn't exist. This is kind of like this is an Unreal, very unique thing with Unreal and Blueprints. Now there might be a way to stop it. I don't know. If somebody knows, go ahead and let me know, and then I can go back to using functions like I would if I was in C++. But I'm going to select our new macro, and then this can be, you can name it like weapon pickup, and then I'll put like a Mac at the end, so weapon pickup macro. Okay. And file, save all, and then it has its own tab, and you just need to go back to your event graph to get back to where we were. So what we need to do is get rid of all this stuff now that we've added that. All we do is take the weapon pickup macro and we drop it into there. Then when we press it, we're going to select that. That's all of this code that we just added. So to get rid of it, all we have to do, bundle it all up and press delete. Isn't that a lot cleaner right there? And now we can continue on with our work, and we're not going to get lost. So as far as what we're going to spawn, we need to spawn an item from our inventory. So I'm going to pull out our inventory. So when we add, I'm going to just double clicking, that's how I access. When we add a unique item to our inventory, it goes to the end. Every time you add something to inventory, it goes to the end of that list. And remember, this list is called an array. And think of an array like a backpack, all right? Only everything gets held in a specific sequence. So what we need to do is when we pick something up, it's getting to the end of the inventory. It's getting to the end of this inventory list. So we need to get the last item in the inventory list. So to do that, we're going to drag off of our inventory and say get. Okay, and it's saying get 0 right now. Well, get 0 would be the very first item in our inventory, because remember in programming we count from 0. What we actually want to get is the last item in our inventory. So this function does that for us. It calculates out what our last index is going to be, and it spits it out. And I believe that's integer. Yeah, it's spitting out an integer, so it already is going to calculate what our last item is. So it's really convenient. So what comes out of here is going to be the item that we're going to want to spawn. So to do that, I'm going to eventually have to go onto the server. We know this already. So we might as well just go ahead and set up that custom event that we've done for animations and everything else, and send this value through to the server, because the server needs to know that this is the item we're going to spawn. Otherwise, if we just spawned it, you as the first player would see it, you picking up would see it, but nobody else in the game would see it, and the server wouldn't see it either. So we're going to go ahead and send it on that way. So to do that, go ahead and start a custom event. Type in custom, add custom event. and we'll just call it spawn weapon to server. Okay, and we're going to immediately set this to run on server and reliable so we do not forget. Compile, save. And we need to add an input, and it's going to be this value that's going to go into there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a new parameter. And what is this? Weapon actual master. You can just highlight over if you forget what it is. Okay, and then we drop down over there, weapon actual master. And remember, it's the class reference. And you can use the color coding. That helps a lot. And that's going to work. Now, let's go ahead and name this weapon to be spawned. So you may be asking yourself at this point, well, how am I going to get this to line up and work? It's not letting me. Remember, once you create one of these, you're going to need to go ahead and it creates another node that calls this. It works backwards. One of the confusing things about doing multiplayer replications. So to do that, you just right-click, spawn weapon to server. Okay. And just connect it up right there. And it's asking us already, what weapon do we want to spawn? Well, we already told you, just right here, just like that. File, save. So you notice I'm doing this a little different already. Traditionally, we would do it not replicating right off the bat, but I'm starting to try to get you in the mindset of already thinking about what you're going to need to replicate and what you're not. And I sat down and already worked this out, kind of like a rough draft of what I was going to do, which is what you should do too when you're developing anything. It's a good idea to kind of think things out before you get too far. So what we're going to do from here is we're going to go ahead and tell this to spawn. And since we're on the server, everybody's going to see it. So I'm going to try and do it this way and see if it works. So I'll just drag off of there and say spawn actor from class. That should be right. That looks right. Okay, that is right. So this is going to spawn our actor, but it needs some information. First off, it needs to know where it's going to spawn. It needs to know how it's going to handle collision once it does spawn, and it's asking for an instigator. That would be mostly used for like a projectile. So the instigator is the person that fired the projectile. So that way, when like say you killed somebody, you would know, number one, who to give the point to. Also, if you were displaying on your screen, so-and-so killed so-and-so with a rifle, that would be your instigator, would be your so-and-so, right? So that way it would know who fired that shot. So to get the location, what we'll do is we will pull off our mesh component. And now this represents this guy, okay? We want to get his location, but we don't want to just get his general location. We want to get that socket that we put in. So to do that, drag off there and say get socket location. Okay. And if you got to remember it, you might want to just copy and paste it, but type in weapon socket and you got to spell it exactly. Now I've made a mistake here. I called the get weapon socket location, but what I actually wanted was the transform. And transform, see if I can do this, is a combination of the location, rotation, and scale. Let me see if I can collapse this again. Collapse nodes. No, that's not what I meant to do. No problem. Just select this, delete it, type in spawn actor from class. Okay, so if you want to, you can right click and it will display all these. Anyway, basically what we want to do is find the node that has all of that information all put together. So we'll say get socket transform. So now this is going to give us our location, rotation, and whatever the, was it scale? Was that the last one? I think it was, I'm not sure. But anyway, just put in your weapon socket right here. Okay. I think it's supposed to be world, but I'm not sure. We'll just leave it like this and see if it gives us any problems. Delete this location. Just go ahead and put that in there like that. Oh, if it lets you. Okay. So now we've given the thing, the SpawnActor function here. It knows where it needs to spawn, but it doesn't know under what conditions, and the collision is very important here. So we need to say always spawn and ignore collisions, because how annoying would it be if you're telling your weapon to spawn and because it's touching the hand a little bit, it doesn't want to spawn? That would be ridiculous. So always spawn, ignore collisions. Okay, I'm just going to move this stuff over. Use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out very quickly like that. Okay, so after we spawn it, it's going to be in his hand, right where it should be. But the problem is, if you go walking off, it doesn't know it's supposed to be connected to his hand. It has no idea really what your intentions are. It's just really, it's programming, right? It's stupid unless you tell it what to do. So you have to tell it to attach itself to the hand. So to do that, you're going to get this value right here, which is the return value for the actor you attached. Okay. So to do that, you're going to drag off here and say attach to component. Okay. And what you want to do is, so for attach to component, the parent is going to be the mesh. Okay. It's the one in charge of the socket. Okay. Because it doesn't know, you might have a lot of things that have sockets. You might have, I don't know, another weapon that has a socket and you want to add a component to that. So it has no idea what the parent is supposed to be unless you tell it. So you want it to be your guy, your mesh, and you want it to be the weapon socket. I want to move this so you can see it. Okay, and for the location rule, I'm just kind of guessing on these, but what works for me, at least from my memory, is snap to target, the rotation, snap to target, snap to target. That might actually be keep world or keeps, I don't know. Just do snap to target for now. We'll see how it is, and make sure that weld simulated bodies is checked. Okay. So here's something that even when I went to go do this, whoa, just kicked the mic. This is something that even when I went to go do this tutorial planning that I totally forgot about, and it was really, it's really an important concept. When we did our weapon inventory, and we call this guy right here, it's referencing the class. And when you're referencing the class, I called it the cookie cutter, right? And I mentioned that you couldn't just destroy that class, right? Because if you did, it's not like destroying an instance. And we talked about the difference between a class and an instance. And an instance is one of the cookies made by the cookie cutter, okay? And we use these cookies, and I'm just doing those as examples. And in this specific instance, we're making weapons from our class, right? So long story short, what I'm getting at is you can't do anything with this class as it is until it's spawned, because as soon as you spawn it, if you notice, it changes into this light blue, and light blue indicates that it's a specific instance. It's a specific thing, all right, that you can manipulate and access variables within that object that you created. Okay, so it's really important to understand the difference between a class and an instance of a class. And for this instance, we want to have a reference to it. Okay, because right now it's just a freaking line, and it's hard to do anything with this right now other than attach it to the component. So to make a reference out of it, we just right click and then promote to a variable. And then we're going to call this variable spawned weapon. Okay? And then we're going to connect it up. All right. And we're going to leave it like that. You could run it in here like this. And I'm trying to remember if I did. Yeah, I did. You can break this off now and then just go directly in there like that, because it represents, this thing now represents that line. And now we can take this and do things with it. We can call it like that. We can get it and we can tell it to do things. And that's what we're going to have to do. Because think about this. Let's say you pick up your first item. It goes to the weapon inventory. It goes to the last index. It says, yep, we want to spawn that. Great. You're the only thing there. No problem. Go through here, SpawnActor. It spawns it in your hand and attaches it. Okay, great. Now you go to your next item. You go, you pick it up. It goes, okay, you got 2 items now in your inventory. I'm going to spawn that on the server. It goes to the server and it spawns it. It spawns it in your hand. Well, guess what? Now you got 2 rifles in your hand. That's a little bit of a problem, and they're going to be on top of each other, and it's going to look absolutely horrible. So what you need to do is you need to destroy your last weapon, and the only way to do that is with a reference to it. It has to know. So the way you have to do this code is before you spawn, you need to say, hey, I need to check if there's a weapon there. And the way to do that is to see if this instance is valid. So you type in is, and you go down here, the one with the question mark, and it's going to check, is this thing valid? Which means, does it exist? If it is valid, it's like, yeah, it does exist. We want to destroy it. That way, when we spawn the new one in, the new one will have a place to go, right? Your old weapon will be out of his hand. So if you just left it like this, guess what would have happened? Destroy actor, and it says target itself. Well, if you look at what class we're in right now, and you say self, you're in your own person's class right now. That means that would destroy yourself. So you need to make sure you connect this spawn weapon to the target of that destroy command that you're giving. So you destroy the weapon that you spawn if it's already valid, which means if there's already one there. However, if it's not valid, that means you haven't spawned one. There's nothing to destroy. So we're not going to destroy anything. We're just going to go straight into the spawn actor. Okay? If you tried to call destroy actor when no destroyed actor exists, it's going to try to find what's in this reference. And there would be nothing there. It would be null. And in C++, if you call a null pointer, and we'll talk about pointers when we get into the C++ portion way down the road, way after we've done lots of stuff, but we'll eventually get there. If you try to call a null pointer or a reference that doesn't have anything in it, I'm not talking about 0, I'm talking about absolutely nothing, it'll crash the whole program. Blueprints is nice. It doesn't do that. It just throws up an error for you. So it kind of saves you from having just a random crash that you don't know what happened. But that's something that you need to be aware of. So we're going to tell it to destroy if we already have it. And I'm just double checking on my notes to see if there's anything else that we need to do. I don't think so. So we're going to go ahead and compile, save all, and we're going to press play, and we're going to see what happens, see if I messed this up or not. Okay, so client 2 goes over, picks up a weapon. Oh, look at that. Shift F1, grab it, Windows, left arrow, okay, and look at that. He has the rifle, and these are both clients, so they're both seeing it. That's good. So let's see what happens. So what do we got in our hands? Just look at the right screen. We got an AK-47. Okay, so he goes over here to the AR-15. He picks it up, and he sees an AR-15. Great. We're going to pick up over here, and it won't let us, remember? Because we're only adding unique items. I must have, when I first clicked, been close to both of them, and it picked up both items at the same time. And if we check our inventory with Q, we'll see that I do, in fact, have all 3 children weapons in my inventory. So that did exactly what it was supposed to do. Okay? Now, if you wanted to see all the different weapons and spawn them, you would, that'll probably be our next tutorial, where you flip through all the different weapons to see what's in your inventory so you can change weapons. And of course, we're going to add animations so that when he does pick up a weapon, it doesn't just all of a sudden spawn in there. But we have to get our basics down first. We got to get it to where he's picking things up. So if I were to stop testing here, I would not be very smart. I need to go through and make sure that this works on non-dedicated sessions as well. So let's go ahead and press Shift F1. Let's make sure that we don't have any weird glitches. We're going to come over here to this guy. Actually, I need to get the first guy to see him. Okay, Shift F1. Back over to here. Pick this up. He's got it. It goes right into his hand. Go to the next one. He has it right into his hand. And he has it right into his hand. So far, so good. Let's go and run it as a non-dedicated session. So hit that check mark, and if you look, 2 players, non-dedicated. Press play. Okay, Shift F1. Shift F1. Windows left. Okay. Let's get our server. He's on the right. Let's get him to pick something up. Goes right into his hand like it's supposed to. Just going to pick this up. Okay, he couldn't pick the one up that was right below him because he already has one of those. If you look at his inventory, it's right there. But anyway, second weapon popped up perfectly. And the AR-15. Now this is what we'd almost always expect, because the server should always have everything working for it, because it's the equivalent of playing a single player game. But sometimes you'll get weird things where you just should be checking both dedicated and non-dedicated sessions. So I pick up my weapon, and he can in fact see a client pick up a weapon. And it appears to be functioning properly, and I have 3 weapons in my inventory. Okay, so a big question you may be asking yourself is, now hang on a second, I don't think you replicated the item that you sent to the server. How are you seeing it? That's what I asked myself. I wasn't exactly sure, and the only solution I could come to was that we told the weapons themselves, if you remember back in the blueprints, we told them to replicate. So if you go to your weapon actual master, you double click on it, and you go over here, it says replicates. I'm thinking that's how it's still replicating, because otherwise in here I would click on this and I would set it to replicate. We may run into a problem down the road where we need to do that, but for right now it's replicating and I'm not telling it to. These are the things that can be tricky with multiplayer. A lot of it's trial and error and figuring things out. So remember when we made this macro here, and I said I had too many random outputs that were continuing the signal flow when I didn't want them to? Well, if you look over here, it doesn't appear that we're having that problem. So I'm going to go ahead and try to make a function in here so it kind of cleans all this up. And we can call this, we go over here, our functions, press plus, and we'll call it our spawn weapon, and you say F for function. I think if you just try to do spawn weapon, it may give you an issue, because if you name something, just do it this way, so we know it's a function. Compile and save, and then let's go back into our event graph, and let's grab all this stuff and let's dump it in there and see what happens. Now what I'm going to do to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to double click here on that, and I'm going to double click here on this, so I don't forget that I need to hook them up to an input. I'll show you what I mean. Make sure you highlight them as you drag. Control C. Whoa, I hit a bunch of stuff. I'm going to redrag just in case. Control C. And then I'm going to go into my spawn weapon function. And I'm going to drop right in here. Control V. Okay, and you can see right here that we're going to have to put an input into there. But for right now, we'll do our signal flow. Okay, that connected fine. And let's see, what do we need to do here? Okay, that's great. It actually does it for you. Just drag and drop it over there. That's really nice. So you can call over here, and you can just, instead of input pin, we need to give it a name. I'm just selecting on there, and that's the weapon we're going to spawn. So we can say, you know, weapon to spawn. I may have already had a name like that. It probably won't cause a problem, but if it does, we'll remember that, and we'll come back here and give that a different name. Oh, see, you see a huge issue that just happened? This could be critical. This would ruin your whole life. For whatever reason, when I copied and pasted it, it wouldn't let me do that. That's interesting. I wonder why that is. That's really, really interesting. I'm guessing it's because when I was doing this before, I made it in the function. I'm not really sure exactly why that doesn't work, but it's good that we're having a problem and you're catching it live. You're going to see how I would handle this. So I guess what I would do to fix that weird thing that's going on here, I would delete this, promote this to a variable, and then call it, instead of, spawned weapon 2. This is kind of our way of debugging and try to figure stuff out. We'll connect it up here like this. So that means that this spawned weapon here is not doing anything. So we need to pull out spawned weapon 2. And we'll need to connect it up wherever spawned weapon was. Remember, this is how we destroyed weapons that were already in our hands. And make sure you delete the spawned weapon original. Okay. So let's see what just happened. So compile, save. No errors so far, but I'm really curious to see what that's going to do. I think I might know why. It's probably because we didn't delete the old stuff. There's another way to do this where you can drag and select and then right click and say collapse to function. And it may say, well, you can't have 2 instances existing. I'm not exactly sure why that did that, but no matter. Let's pull out our spawned weapon function. Okay? And let's leave those nodes like this. Let's break this. Okay? And we're going to run it in here like this. And basically, we've just cleaned all this up. I'm not convinced it's going to work, but we're going to go from here, and I'm going to double click in here. We're going to make sure everything is still connected and lined up. It appears to be. Compile, save all, press play. Let's see what happens when we send a client over. Picks up a gun, runs in front of the server. He has the gun. Let's have the server come in front of the client. He comes over here, picks up a weapon. Looks good. Let's have him pick up another. Okay. Oh, that's because he only has 2 items in his inventory. Let's see what's going on here. Oh, there it goes. Just a little. Didn't like it for some reason. Okay, he's got all 3 in there. Now let's try a dedicated session. Press play. Okay. Shift F1. Let's clean these screens up. Okay, and grab 2 weapons by accident again. He's got the AK. And he's got the AR. He's going to run over here. He's getting it. He's got it. Okay, and that looks good to me. Okay, so let's escape out of there. It looks like we fixed everything. That's our function. Go to our event graph. Let's collect all these items. Make sure you don't do what I almost just did and grab the function 2. All this stuff that we're no longer using, we're going to highlight, then we're going to delete. And if you remember, we're not using our spawned weapon anymore, so we're going to delete it. I'm going to compile, save all. Anytime you do something like that, that's crazy. You want to come back, make sure everything's still working. It appears to be. Yeah, everything's still working. Now, this could cause problems, but I'm not going to keep this spawned weapon 2. I'm going to F2 this, and I'm going to try and go back to the original name. Sometimes it still remembers the old names you had for whatever reason, and it causes problems. Okay, he picks up that weapon. I keep picking up 2 weapons. Those items are just too close together. That's why that's doing that. Okay, he's picked up that one. Picked up that one. Okay, all is good in the hood. All right, escape. Now that looks a lot cleaner. So what we need to do is comment this out. So I know you can see it when you zoom in on it, but when you're back here trying to find stuff, it makes it kind of difficult. So let's just comment on, let's see, just highlight it, press C, and just, I don't know, whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. You could say pick up weapon and spawn in characters, like that matters. I don't know. Pick up weapon and spawn in character's hand. This, remember, is our little test function to see, so eventually it's going to go away. And then this is a little bit different. You could do destroys pickup after picked up. That's destroys pickup after picked up. If that's not confusing, just name it do something better than that, please. Anyway, and you can throw it in there with this, you know, and you can even I'm big on this, you know, just color it whatever you want. Usually I'll do weapons one color, I'll do other stuff other colors, but anyway, compile, save all. One little thing I wanted to fix from last time, if you go into your weapon pickups, actually don't do that. Remember the parent, when you change something there, it changes it to all of them, so it saves you a lot of time. So go to your weapon pickup master, go to your viewport, and if you go to your box, and we're going to move it on up like that, and that should get us near. I'm going to right click and here, let's slow down that camera, go to 2. That may be a little high. Anyway, our root node's right there, so what we're going to be able to do is set these in the world a lot easier and have them be at the height we want. Now eventually we can compile, save. Compile, save all. Eventually we're going to have these weapons. I can do whatever we want. We can have them light up when we go over them. We can have them fall on the ground and lay naturally. But for right now, for testing purposes, we're just going to, and you notice how they're all up in the air like this? Now, you can either drag in new ones. So go to your weapon pickups, not actuals. So you could either bring it in like this, you know, and you could have it in here all quick and press the end key, and it will be to its proper testing elevation. That nasty circle you're seeing is just the root node. So you can select all of these and press end. Oops. And it gets them to their proper height. And like I said, we can eventually go in there and fiddle with these. They could be laying on their side or doing whatever. Save all, and there you have it. So we got a lot of different things we could do in the next few videos. We could work on a few more animation things, but I really would like to be able to cycle through the list on our inventory. It's going to serve to act as another way to check what we have in our inventory rather than to have that makeshift check what we have with the Q key. But so that might be the next thing we do. Another thing I want you to be thinking about and considering the difference between classes and instances made by classes. So all these guns right here are the separate instances, the separate little objects that are made, the cookies, if you will, and the class that made those was the weapon pickup master, okay, and that would be the cookie cutter, all right, and we referenced this class, but we couldn't do anything with it other than reference it until we made it an instance, until we spawned it in the, let me back out of here a little bit. This is my third person character. Yeah, see, I've condensed everything so much so early I can't even, until we made it an instance, we couldn't do anything with it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have like things inside this spawned weapon, right? We're going to have like maybe a bullets or whatever. I don't know. We'll have a whole bunch of stuff in there, and we're going to want to be able to call them. The only way to do that is to make it an instance. And just want to make sure that you're clear on what this class refers to. It's actually the weapon actual, not the weapon pickup. So it would be the weapon actual. Okay, that's what specific class this is. So hopefully that's sinking in. I might be you think, oh my gosh, he is just saying the same thing over and over again. That's how big of a deal it is, though. You have to understand this concept, or in any programming language, especially when you're doing it here, or you're going to drive yourself insane trying to figure out why certain things aren't working. But anyway, that's all I have for today. Stick around, more to come.